The amniotic fluid in the mother's womb is a protective, warm fluid that always keeps the infant in 98.6 degree. In amniobed, the infant is placed in a warm bath that is very similar in temperature and environment to the amniotic fluid bath in the mother's womb. When preterm infants are born, they're vulnerable to excessive heat loss. They have very thin skin, their blood vessels are close to the skin, they don't have the subcutaneous fat that insulates them from heat loss.
Hello and welcome to Red Crow Healthcare Innovators Unplugged. My name is Dr. Oren Aloni-Charis. I'm the Managing Director of Red Crow. And we're coming to you from the NASDAQ Entrepreneurial Center in San Francisco. Thanks for joining us today. My guest today is Dr. Amir Fassihi, the CEO and founder of Amnion Life. Amnion Life is a really interesting company that's developed something called the AmnioBed, which is essentially an artificial womb for premature babies, particularly the early preemies. And we're going to learn a lot more about that today. Amir, thank you for joining us.
Thank you for the invitation.
Terrific. Yeah, I'm glad you're here. So it's a pretty staggering problem, premature birth. How many premature births are there?
It is a staggering problem. It's not just the numbers, which I'll tell you about, but also the outcomes, the negative outcomes. It is the #1 cause of death for infants in the United States.
Okay.
It's the #1 cause of children's death less than 5 years globally per WHO. And the reason being is that 400,000 infants a year in the U.S., 15 million globally, 3.5 million a year just in India alone are born premature. The reason that is such a negative, there's such negative healthcare burdens and consequences for these infants is that when these infants are born, they're more like cold-blooded animals than warm-blooded animals in that they cannot control their body temperature at all. They don't have that mechanism, they don't need that mechanism. But when they're born in 6 to 7 months, their body habit is such that they can lose tremendous amount of heat and they can have hypothermic episodes as soon as they're born. Within 5 minutes of birth, they can have their core body temperature dropping. And that drop in core body temperature can have serious effects, negative effects on developing organs like the brain, all the other organs that are developing. Especially the brain can have anything from, intellectual disabilities to cerebral palsy to intracranial hemorrhages to even the hypothermic episodes in the first 60 minutes, the golden hour of life, is associated with mortalities within 72 hours, and also all the negative effects. So it is really important for us to really take care of these infants the moment they're born, make sure that they develop in the same manner that they were supposed to in the womb.
Right.
So that's the gold standard. And so what we're trying to do with AmnioBed and artificial placenta in the future is that we want to take these infants as soon as they're born, put them back in an environment that's very similar to what they were back then. Synthetic amniotic fluid, warm, sterile. We can provide oxygenation via umbilical cords as opposed to the premature lungs, which can have their own negative consequences. So the goal of the company is to create novel devices that can reduce mortality and morbidity for these infants.
So let's unpack that. When a baby is in utero, they're in the amniotic fluid, they're not breathing. The temperature is the temperature of the mother, whatever the body temperature is.
It's actually half a degree higher than the body temperature because of the metabolic activity of the infant.
Oh, very
so the infant is
interesting.
actually warmer than the mother.
Okay,
Yeah.
cool. And then they're born. And when you have a healthy full-term baby, they're born, they have a lot of fat, they're nice and chubby.
They have subcutaneous fat, they
Right.
have brown fat that they can use to generate
Just
heat.
metabolically active.
They don't have, the blood vessels are not close to the skin. They have thicker skin. So when they're born at term, a human being can survive in room temperature with some kangaroo care, with some being next to the mother. But when they're younger, when they're born, anywhere, below 8 months, 7 months of pregnancy, and you have very thin skin, you don't have the subcutaneous fat for insulation. When their outside temperature drops, their core temperature drops, and their only reaction that they have is a shock and awe reaction. It's a stress reaction.
Stress reaction.
That for the body.
And so you're trying to solve the problem of hypothermia and dehydration with your solution. And when you get hypothermia and when you have dehydration in these premature infants who are very vulnerable definitionally, it sets off a cascade of events, right, which leads to intracranial hemorrhage and massive glucose use and swings in their blood sugar and all of the downstream.
Decreased weight gain in the in the NICU, which prolongs their NICU stay.
Okay, so what you've then done with your amnio bed is try to replicate some of the environment that the baby enjoyed in the womb. Now, before you tell us about that, I mean, what do we do now? We don't just set them free and hope that everything works out. What's the solution today?
The solution today for these very preterm and extreme preterm infants is that as soon as they're born, they place them into a plastic, slide them into a plastic wrap. In Japan, they actually wrap them in a saran wrap because they believe there's some injuries as you slide the infant in the bag. And they place them under radiant warmers, the heat lamps that are, you see them in restaurants, you see them in labor and delivery often. The issue with that is that despite the best efforts, this is the best technology we have right now for these infants, anywhere from 25% to 78%, and this is based on a major Kaiser report. These are infants that are born in Kaiser, and despite the best efforts, 25% to 78% have hypothermic episodes within the first 60 minutes, knowing that these episodes are associated with all kinds of morbidities and mortalities.
Right, despite their best
Despite
efforts.
that. And the current technology, in addition, there's 4% chance of hyperthermia. When you're in the plastic and you're under heat lamp, you can get your temperature go above 38 degrees, 38.5 degrees Celsius, and you can have negative consequences as a result.
Interesting, interesting. And then there are the convection incubators as well.
That's, yeah, immediately upon birth, they're in the labor and delivery is a radiant warmer in the plastic. Once they're moved into the NICU, it's a heated mattresses with humidification.
Right.
And this technology is really more than 100 years old. It's 19th century technology. It's got computerized and bells and whistles and all that, but it's still a mattress environment that is not really suitable for the age that these infants are in, or the environment that these infants need for the development, the fluid environment.
Let me try to describe it as I understand it, and then you can fill in the blanks. So what you're doing is you're putting a baby in essentially a car seat that has sensors, so they're kind of restrained a little bit, so they're safe.
Yeah, the fluid comes to the neck level.
The fluid comes, and you bathe them in an amniotic-like fluid or a synthetic amniotic fluid, and you manage the temperature. And so by doing that, you don't have insensible loss of fluid, and you can really, through conductive temperature changes, you can really keep their temperature exactly where you want.
You not only the temperature exactly what you want, but what happens in utero is that because of the osmotic difference between the amniotic fluid and the infant serum, there is water being absorbed by the infant from the amniotic fluid all the time. So we're also recreating that absorption fluids from the bath. So it replaces the IV fluid administration, which for unknown reasons, the IV fluid administered to these infants, the higher the dose, the increased chance of chronic lung disease, bronchopulmonary dysplasia. Because it messes up the electrolyte balance in the serum as the high doses are coming into the veins. We don't know exactly what the mechanism is, but we want to eliminate not just the insensible water loss, but we want to actually infant absorb water. And in the future, we can actually administer pharmaceuticals into the fluid as well because the skin is so thin.
Right.
It's been shown in lambs that it can be absorbed immediately.
Interesting. So what inspired you to do this? You're a neuroradiologist by training, and you practice.
Yeah.
So why are you inspired to take care of premature babies?
The story goes about 6 years ago. We visited a cousin in Europe who had a very preterm infant who had spent months in the NICU. And as a result of her stay, she had developed some ocular and neurodevelopmental injuries. And when I saw her 6 years ago, 3 weeks later after seeing her, I had a dream, a very, very, very vivid dream in my on our trip that preterm infants should be in a fluid environment, otherwise they're suffering. And this was the gist of the dream.
Yeah.
And I woke up and I thought, these infants are suffering, and I just got obsessed. And at first I wasn't taking it seriously for weeks and months, but the more I thought about it, the more there was a need, the more, it's an area that it's such a leap in innovation that the bigger companies are not going to take that chance.
Right.
And a smaller entrepreneur that has an idea, who may have an idea, you really need to take a bold step. You really need to say, okay, this is a huge project, but I'm going to do it.
Right.
And that happened to me about 3-4 years ago. I took on that journey, and really from that dream, it really made me into a passion and obsession because I really wanted I needed to pursue that dream. I had to
Interesting.
pursue that dream. Otherwise, it would have been a void in my life, not
Right.
pursuing it.
That's really interesting. So, where are you today with the development of the company of Amnion Life, and also the development of the Amnio bed?
So as far as the company and Amnio bed itself, we've come a long way. The Amnio bed, we've been working on it for 3 years now. It's a very complex device. It has more than 14 subsystems, everything from multiple dosing pumps to multiple sensors to software to everything that needs to be, the fluid needs to be detected for stool particles so it can
Right.
be flushed. So the device we've been on multiple prototypes now for the last 3 years in our laboratory that we built. I built the company with experts from around the world. So it's really a remote philosophy in the company. You are where you are physically, but you can provide your expertise. If you're regulatory, our regulatory experts are in the US, our business development's mostly in the US, but we have neonatologists in Japan, Canada, Europe.
Okay.
Our engineers in Europe, we've had engineers in the US as well. But it's really a remote global company working on one product. And we've come a long way in the 3 years. And we're about 12 months away from our first clinical trials, the device being ready, safe enough so we can get our initial investigation of device exemption for first trial.
Okay. In humans?
In humans, yeah.
12 months.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And you're currently raising a round on Red Crow.
Yes, I'm raising a round on Red Crow. It's a bridge round for $500,000. And then in 2020, we're working on a Series A, which is anywhere between $2.5 to $5 million.
Right.
So two things are happening at the same time. The Series A, we're discussing it with some institutional funds, and the smaller bridge round at Red Crow, which we're working on right now.
Well, terrific. And of course, you're welcome to go to Red Crow and look at some of the information around the deal, redcrow.com, and click on the Amnion Life profile. So, Amir, you've built your business. It seems like you're at a bit of a pivot now, where you've gone from idea and you've developed your IP, have some good patent protection, and good prototyping work, and now you're starting to build and grow your business. What are some of the things you feel like you want to accomplish, other than getting into human trials in the next 12 months?
Well, let me just mention about the patents. I didn't talk about that, but we do have multiple patents right now on AmnioBed, and it's now a responsibility for us to develop this, because if we don't do it, nobody else can.
That's true.
So that's one thing. And then the other thing is that we have developed a device and gotten patent issued for artificial placenta. So that's a device that will complete the whole amniotic, the womb, the artificial womb that
Right.
you mentioned. So that's as far as patents. We're pending in Europe, Japan, China, multiple areas, but we have a very solid IP portfolio now. As far as in the next 12 months, the most important thing is, for a company like ours, is the pivotal clinical trials. I think the biggest chunk of money anywhere is spent on that.
Of course.
And for us to have a successful pivotal trials, we have to have a successful pilot study that can show all the little things that we need to take into consideration for the big one. So, on one hand, for the next 12 months is the R&D of the device, making sure all the prototype we're working on is safe enough. All the preclinical testings, everything from electrical testing, electromagnetic testing, to biocompatibility of all the plastics, to software validation. Everything needs to be done in the next 12 months. But at the same time, my focus is on how do I get the pilot study done right on 5 infants, so that I know that I can have the right tools for the next bigger study.
Have you identified any clinical partners for the trials?
Well, the neonatologists that we have in Europe, in Japan, in Canada are potentially partners. In Serbia, where we have a laboratory, the neonatologist there is working almost daily with our engineers on validation of just usability of the device. As far as the bigger trials, eventually we need to come to the US. But that path of coming to the US and which institutions and how we're going to find these partnerships, that's something that's going to work out with the Series A and potential partners that are going to come in that round.
Right. Very interesting. Well, I wish you the best of luck. This is very important. I'd like to underscore that this is not just a third world problem, right? It's very common, 9% or
Yeah.
so births in the United States are
Yeah,
premature births.
one out of 11 births in the United States.
It's a lot.
It's a lot, yeah. And you know, in the hospitals, many hospitals, about 10% of the revenue or cost is associated with the NICU alone.
Mm-hmm.
So it's, you know, the radiology, the other side of the game where I am, it's a big chunk, but
Yeah.
this is a big chunk
Right.
as well. And we don't really recognize it, and we don't really see it in society as much because we don't see these infants as much. We tend to visit grandparents in the ICU, but very few people actually visit the NICU.
Right.
And so it's an area that is a $26 billion market, but very few companies are there that focus on it, and very little of the healthcare is focused on it, where, in my opinion, we need to put a lot more focus there, because these children, if we can prevent just one hypothermic episode, we're preventing a lifelong of potential suffering.
Right, right. You've actually received a lot of awards. Recently, you were a part of the Cleveland Clinic Medical Innovation Summit and won an award there. Tell me some of the accolades you've received for your company and your product.
I think that the two most important awards have been, one was the Cleveland Clinic Innovation Summit, where we won the Gold Award, and it was out of 100 companies. But the other one that's also important for us was the Stanford UCSF Pediatric Devices Consortium, which was the pediatric community now judging
Right.
us, not just, you know, Cleveland was overall, which is really, it's a big honor.
Yeah.
But to have the pediatricians say, this is something we need, and award us for that was special.
That's very validating.
Yeah.
Yeah. Have you gotten a lot of validation from doctors directly, pediatricians, neonatologists?
Yes and no. I think the AmnioBed is such a leap compared to the current technology
Yeah.
that neonatologists, when you have a change like that, there will be skepticism.
Sure.
And we have two kinds of skepticism. The medical-related skepticism, how are you going to manage the central line? How are you going to manage the airways?
Mm-hmm.
And we've been able to overcome all of those.
Right.
Some of them are complex, you know, solutions, but they've been solved. They're in our patents. They're in our device.
Good.
Other than that, it's a question of reimbursement. You know, this is going to be much more expensive than the current technology, and the answer to that is that what is the value that, you know, we can bring to the table for a child? And I know it's going to cost a little bit more to have a plastic, special, you know,
Right.
plastics
Right.
and AmnioBed, but the value that we bring to that child, which potentially could be lifelong, potentially could be severe neurological disabilities, is something that once the neonatologists think about it and realize it, then they realize the insurance companies may pay for this and will pay for this, because it will prevent a lot of negative costs in the future.
Right. Well, and you're also projecting that you can facilitate shorter NICU
Absolutely.
stays, right?
Yeah,
Well, that'll be
yeah.
a cost savings.
Yeah, and these infants, they can stay in the ICU. The very preterm infants average 47 days. The extreme preterm infants average 110 days.
Wow.
And part of the reason they're in there for so long is because they're not gaining weight.
Right.
Because they're losing calorie to the environment. Their fluid balance is not appropriate. So we want to increase the weight gain in the NICU and decrease those days of stay. So that way we bring value immediately.
Right. Good. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, we'll take a look at some of his work and then be back with Brian Smith to talk about Amir's journey as an entrepreneur. Thanks for joining us.
These infants are at risk of infections, sepsis, death. Preterm infancy is the #1 cause of infant death in the United States.
AmnioBed is being designed to decrease complications of preterm birth by reducing the chances of hypothermia, dehydration, skin injuries, while creating a far warmer and more comfortable environment for the infant. Reducing complications of preterm birth can significantly reduce the length of stay in the NICU for preterm infants, resulting in significant cost savings for our healthcare system.
Well, Amir, thanks for joining us today at the NASDAQ Entrepreneurial Center.
Thank you for your invitation.
Our pleasure. I'm Brian Smith, the CEO, co-founder of Red Crow, and this is a segment we like to do to wrap up your interview here today and just get to know the CEO, the founder of a company, a little better. And so obviously, for those who watch this that know my personal story and the loss of a child at 24 weeks due to premature birth, Amnion Life is a very important company to me, but you're also a great founder, CEO. There's more to you than Amnion Life. And so one of the things we always talk about, Amir, at Red Crow is the burn the ships moment, right? And I know a little of your story and how Amnion Life came to be, which is really fascinating. And maybe you want to share that a little bit, but what was your burn the ships moment to say, I'm going to start this company and I'm going to start to put everything I've got into it?
Yeah. Well, as you know, the idea for Amnion Life came about after a dream I had one night that these infants, premature infants, should be in synthetic amniotic fluid in a warm environment so they don't have, these episodes. And after that dream, and every entrepreneur goes through that moment. It could be a dream, it could be. You have this timeline where you're not sure whether you're going to jump in the water, get in the water or not. You're testing the water, and that took for me months, months and months. And then at one point, I actually gave up. I threw away all my notes, and I thought, this is too big of a project. I can't do this. And later on, I went back to it. And when you go back to it the second time, and early on was nothing. I didn't have any investments. It was just an idea. When I went back to the second time, I realized that I cannot have regrets in life. I cannot leave this project on any circumstances. It's not about, it's not about, burning the ships that was left behind. It's about not following a dream that you had, and that can really burn you down the line more harshly than burning any bridges that you had in the past. It will eat inside you. So I really jumped in the water and I said, I'm going to go for this. If I don't go through this, I'm going to have regrets in life. I don't want to have any regrets in life, and I'm in it.
Right, yeah. And the moment can feel so big and overwhelming when you're actually considering doing something that, I've been there, I know. And when you do it, you almost are of the mindset of, I can't believe I almost didn't do this because I would have regretted this. And I think that that's really important. But there's that leap, there is that burning of the ship that you have to do to get there for many of us, right? So given the journey so far, we like to also ask, what are some of the advices you would give to other entrepreneurs that are thinking of burning a ship and starting a company? And what could you say that could help them?
Well, when you're talking about burning the ships, you have to remember the goal is that you want to have 100% focus on the company. You don't want to have any other commitments that are career-wise, work-wise, that will hamper you down.
Right.
So every entrepreneur needs to go through a period where they realize that, this is it. I have everything here. Now, part of that is, getting rid of your old previous careers and arrangements and all that. But part of it is also emotionally, just getting into a new company and new role and taking it on and not thinking about the responsibilities for the previous commitments that you had as much as what you're looking forward, and really giving 100%.
Right.
Regardless of whether the ships are there or not, you burn it or not, you need to put 100% focus on the future and where you're going.
Right.
And hopefully you don't have to turn back and look for ships. Ships may not be there for you,
Right.
whether you burn them or not at that point.
That's a good point, Amir. I guess that's one way to look at it. You're so right, because the reason that we're all working together at the end of the day, it's to do good, it's to bring innovation to the market, to the forefront. But Red Crow is that vehicle to help you tell your story and to raise money to continue to move forward. And so the essential part to a lot of startups, and you've already had it. Investors believe in you, they're putting money in you, and that's validation. And so now I'm doing this not just for me, but for the people that, especially a company like Amnion Life, which is really a game changer in a space that hasn't had a lot of disruption going back to the 70s. So I think, your investors are jumping on board. They get it. They see the vision, and I think that that's always validating for someone like yourself to keep going.
Absolutely, and they need to know that they can count on me, and I need to, make sure that I do my job for them to be secure and feel confident that somebody has taken care of, is a custodian of their investment.
Right, right. Well, the last question is, and as most people that know Red Crow know that my co-founder is Jerry Harrison, who is a member of Talking Heads in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. You were actually very successful at the Cleveland Clinic Innovation Summit. After placing as one of the top companies that presented, you got to celebrate at the Rock Hall and actually see Jerry perform with the side deal, and Aislinn Harrison, who is our creative director and chief of staff. So with that said, keeping with the music theme, if Amnion Life had a theme song, what would it be and why?
I would go with Whitney Houston, The Greatest Love of All. I believe the children are our future. And if we invest in the children, we know that if we win the children, they are our future. And for us, if it's a premature infant, we have more to invest and we have more responsibility because they're outside of the gold standard, the womb environment. And now we have to invest a lot more just to get them to that 9 months due date. And then we still need to invest more.
Right.
So I would go with Whitney Houston's The Greatest Love of All.
I love the song. I love Whitney Houston. That is a perfect theme song for what you're doing. So beautiful. That's great. Well, thank you, Amir, for again joining us and being with us here at the NASDAQ Entrepreneurial Center. I want to thank all the folks at the NASDAQ Entrepreneurial Center for hosting Red Crow Healthcare Innovators Unplugged. It's a great facility, great studio. I want to thank Aislinn Harrison, our creative director, who's also editing these videos, and to the entire Red Crow team for all their hard work in bringing companies like Amnion Life to the big stage and onto our platform. So thanks, Amir.
Thank you.
Until next time, I'm Brian Smith.